Oh, look, I can join. Add someone.
Let me turn the camera.
Yes! We did it! We did it! You look so pretty!
Let me check. Perfect.
All right.
Hi, everybody. How are you doing?
It is a beautiful day over here in Jersey. It's like 73 degrees.
That's nice.
Is it hot still over there?
Today in the late it's kind of cloudy instead, but these past days have been like this. Like in the morning it's cloudy and then it gets a little hotter during the day, like warmer. Let's see today, I don't know. I think it's gonna get a little rain. So today we're gonna talk about dysfunctional families. Maybe we can kind of like have a little buffer, a few minutes just to allow people to join in the meantime. We can just introduce ourselves. I am an holistic coach, a scientist, and an expert in narcissistic personality disorder. And Michelle,
I am, unfortunately, an expert in narcissistic abuse from every angle. And I did my master's and bachelor's in psychology, so I've got the education to match up with the experience, sadly.
no, that's very important actually, because unfortunately, that's the problem that you don't know in person what narcissism is. It's very difficult to be able to teach others and to understand and to recognize the dynamics of the narcissistic abuse syndrome, for example. So, unfortunately, many psychologists don't never had experiences of abuse, and that makes it difficult for them to be able to help the victims or even understand them. And so I suggest to all the victims to go, like if they need a therapist or a coach or anything to get out of the narcissistic abuse syndrome, to go to someone that is a survivor, psychologist or life coach, or even just a survivor that doesn't have any other knowledge, because it's way more useful and helpful to get out of the narcissistic abuse syndrome and to understand the dynamics, because like having life experience of what narcissistic abuse is a completely different world than studying it in a book, especially considering that the books are written just by people that like oftentimes have never seen the narcissist, because narcissists don't go the psychologists, don't go to psychiatrists. Only the real psychopaths actually get into the clinics. And so the narcissistic people in general are not all psychopaths. And so it becomes very important for the victims to go to someone that knows what narcissism is. So today we're going to be talking about narcissistic families and functional
Real
families.
quick, I'm going to jump in, adding to what you were saying. I was getting my master's degree in psychology, and it was like, I remember very vividly, it was a Saturday class, and it was about personality disorders, and the professor mentioned it. She was like, oh, then there's narcissism. I'm a narcissist. And that was it. It was a very flippant, like, reference. No one went into it, went into, like, detail or the severity of narcissistic abuse, which...
Yeah, because narcissism is really what we receive every day from the system, from our society. Narcissistic abuse is what's being used by every corporation, really, every entity that just under control. Because in the end, narcissism is just a method of abuse. It's not a personality disorder. It's just a way of submitting other, like dominating others. And so it's just used at the psychological level. And most psychologists are oftentimes narcissistic themselves. Sam Buckman is a famous Crupi professor, which is the guy that started studying narcissistic abuse, he's himself narcissist, and he said that he started being a professor and studying narcissism thanks to the fact that he has been diagnosed as narcissist, and so he started studying narcissism. But then, narcissism is being a pathological liar that just wants to dominate everybody. It's unbelievable that we even allowed a narcissist to become a professor that studied narcissism, because what can he do? The only thing he can do is actually to get people to pretend that narcissism is something else. Because you cannot, it's like asking a murderer to how to catch murderers. You know, it's just like, it doesn't make any sense. And so, what is your specific experience in narcissism, or if you want to say a bit more about your take on this?
Let's just jump right into the dysfunctional family unit, because I always use quotes when I refer to mothers, fathers that are narcissists, or family systems that are narcissistic, because I am blessed with my own family, my husband and our children, and it's pretty awesome to be a cycle breaker. It super sucks. Like, it's not fun to take on this role, you know, but shoot, it's worth our every effort. So I was raised in a severely dysfunctional unit. You know, my mother was the primary narcissist, and she was ratchet, you know, my whole life. And it took me up until 3 years ago that I finally was able to identify this is what I'm dealing with. And, you know, you weigh in on this as well. It's like you just have this feeling, this oppressive feeling of condescension your whole life. You're just growing up, and like, it just doesn't feel good. You know, you're a child and you're supposed to be happy, living your best years, you know, and you're just so miserable. Because I was the black sheep, and they're always just looking for ways to put you down, to shame you, to guilt you, and that's all efforts to control you.
Yeah, and I want to open a parenthesis on this part, because when we are in a narcissistic family or whatever system that is narcissistic, and the predominance of people in the system is predatory and parasitic, what happens is that the black sheep is a different one. It's the one that awakens. It's not the black sheep because he did anything wrong. It's actually the opposite. It's because being born in a narcissistic family means that you're the one that is going to break it. And they know it, because what they try to do is to continue the narrative, continue perpetuate their system, their family, continue abuse others, to continue gather narcissistic supply from the world, from you, from everybody. And so if you awaken and you break the cycle, or you start calling them out on what they're doing, because it is wrong what they're doing, they consider you the black sheep, and so they have to start destroying your self-esteem.
You want against their dysfunction, and they're stuck in this space of just comfort and recycling the same negativity and misery, and they just want to stay in that space. And we're like, this is not right.
Yeah, exactly. You know, but really, it's like narcissism in general is also not just a personality disorder, but is having a dependency from anything, really. So anyone that has any form of dependency, it can be from a drug, it can be from money, it can be from a narrative. Like what most of the times narcissists are depend on is the fact is they're grandiose. They want to have a hyper position, like a dominance over others, or they want to be the ones. So they want to live in this world, or they want to see reflected in the world and into others their grandiose, and they're dependent on that narrative, right? And so anyone that breaks that, then ruin that dream for them, they of course have to attack that person as much as possible, because they're like a drug addict on with drug symptoms. It's just like taking away from them their drug, the only thing that makes them feel good. And so they behave like just drug addicts, attacking everything and everyone that goes against their own goals, the things they depend on. And it's a real chemical dependency for them. And so let's talk about maybe the structure of the dysfunctional family and how the different characters play a role in the dysfunctional family. I have my whole life experience as well. Like my family have a lot of narcissism that really runs families. And so I have a lot of experience. I had that were narcissistic, had a lot of bosses that were narcissistic. So I really have an enormous amount. Yeah, because we live in a society that is, as soon as you try to climb the ladder, as soon as you try to climb the ladder a little bit and you get into lobbies, you kind of do it. So every time you try to get into a field where there is some sort of social status that allows people to feel more grandiose, like others, they're all narcissistic. Those are the ones attracted.
It's like once you're able to identify it, you're like, oh my God, they're everywhere. It's almost rewarded to what you were saying. Excuse me. It's almost rewarded in corporate life, because they're like, oh, you take initiative or you're bossy kind of thing. It's like all the attributes that narcissists use maliciously against us. It's like that's reinforced in the corporate world almost.
Because we live in a farm, we live not the whole world. Like capitalism in particular is just a way of farming, like the Matrix. It's really the perfect allegory for that. Because really, like, it's just a world where sheep, which is the population, the masses, and then those are managed by all predatory and pathetic kind of personalities, like narcissists. And they are selected to be that way. And it's not even because of because they're grandiose or anything, but because they have no values, they have no morals. And so in a system that only wants profit and doesn't care about the consequences on people and on the future of our planet and our species and of the world in general, you cannot have people like us in that system as management, because if you do, break the cycle even there. So we're going to be the black sheep even there. So that makes you understand how we, in fact, live in a system that is totally upside down and doesn't lead anywhere. So we need to start regaining power, which is what I'm trying to do with the people. That's why I educate people, because it's important that people understand and make the next step in the evolution from the black sheep to the aware and awakened empire.
Yeah, black sheep are the truth tellers, the justice seekers.
Exactly. They have to regain power in our society, because those are the only personality types that we should be allowed to have power. But they tend to be pushed away by all this narcissistic abuse they receive with their families, and the guilt trips and the manipulations and the belief that they are and they believe they actually are they're the bad person, they're the black sheep. So they have to overcome all the conditionings they receive, all the lies they're told, and all the loss of self-esteem, all the obstacles the narcissistic people put in their path for them to get back to the role that in society we need to have, because otherwise things are never going to go better. It only can go worse. So in the dysfunctional family, I see more people are joining too. Hi everyone. In a dysfunctional family, we have various roles. There are various ways of being dysfunctional. The only thing that really take overlap that makes it's common to all the dysfunctional units in every field, from families to workplaces, is this dependency. The dependency from whatever. It can be from the narrative, it can be from profit, it can be from abusing others, from grandiosity, it can be from anything. But every time someone has dependency, then it becomes dysfunctional. At that point, it puts that dependency as a priority over anything else. And that means that it is not possible to experience unconditionality, like unconditional love in such units, because they have a dependency. So they are only conditional. They give in exchange for what they're looking for. They give in exchange for the drug they're addicted to, for the resource they're addicted to. And so that's the reason why these units become dysfunctional. How was your unit dysfunctional? What would you describe were the roles your dysfunctional pattern?
You know, I'm glad you said that about the, like, people adhere to, like, whatever is reinforcing the dysfunction, like a profit or whatever, the family notoriety or something like that. That's 1,000% my experience. It's like my father was the enabler. So he was, I call him the henchman. So he was reinforcing the narcissist every step of the way. My mother, you know, it's like the worse she was. And whenever I would like approach my father thinking he would be like the logical one of the two, like it would, you know, I can appeal to him, like maybe he actually gives a shit about me, like his daughter, but never. It was always that I was met with the same refusal to admit or identify this woman as being the narcissist, and it's because he equally dysfunctional. You know, it's like these people trauma bond to one another because it's like they're normalizing, legitimizing each other's dysfunction, you know? So he is severely dysfunction. I do believe he's an inverted narcissist as well, which means for anyone that, like, it's an inverted narcissist is basically someone that rides the coattails of a narcissist. It's like he wants to have all those, you know, wicked, dominant traits to pursue the same agenda, but he's like more a background figure. So he rides the narc's coattails. He's an inverted narcissist. He enables her all the while, but it's also like this twisted like narrative that he has in his head that he's her protector. You know, I think unfortunately, yeah.
The Stockholm syndrome, because these people really develop, like, first of all, narcissistic individuals, just they pick their partners on purpose for them to be either enablers or proxies. They don't have any, they do not include anyone else in the family. They purposely pick partners in order for them to be on their side in a way or another. Either they are unaware people that they can train and use as pros, dogs against others to dominate and to conquer, or they are people that just are flying monkeys, so enablers that just support their reality and play their chess game together with them by supporting their narrative, by supporting them against their kids, against other people. So narcissists only pick a teammate, basically. So their partner is just another person that they use as a team, and that's it. They don't really love their partners, and they pick them on purpose. You were saying?
No, it's like an ally. They're cohorts. They don't have any substantial, formidable feelings or connections with people, so they view, like, they take the concept of love, like they throw it around like it's nothing. But they say, oh, I love you, you know, whatever. It's loyalty that they're looking for. It's like that unflinching, like, adherence to their garbage nonsense, their fake reality.
Absolutely. And this is absolutely true. And there are various settings in which this can happen, because in the end, again, it's a matter of roles. As long as you have one abuser and one flying monkey supporter, how you want to call it, hollaback, like you just have to have one person that allows and supports the narcissist in their own path towards dominating everybody and conquering and destroying. That's what they do. They just try to raise it up all the time. And so there are various things I refer to people as in I will say, in the sense that people have different survival strategies. Both narcissistic people and also enablers tend to occupy a different niche that is allowed to them, right? And so they can be more predatory, more parasitic, more hyenas, and like just feed off of what others gather for them. And so it's nature, it's the universe. That's how we think. That's how we apply. We survive in the world. And so we are not different than anything else in the universe. This is just the way of the universe to build a spectrum of personality types. And so these different developments that they have, the brain development that they have as kids, just determine that they occupy a different niche in the world as compared to us, and so they tend to be more predatory, more dependent on us, because that's the thing. They depend on us because they're the real codependents, which is why they abuse us, that's why they pick us, that's why they decide to use our resources, because we are instead very dependent people. We tend to do whatever it takes for us to
Target us because they essentially want to emulate our qualities. They want to snuff you out and steal all your endearing traits.
Yeah, totally. That's what they do. Because so the point is that narcissists, when they're born and their brain is developed, what happens is that they do not focus on their own personality. They are born in a situation in which abuse is already going on, and so they observe the abuse. They observe that most people, the empathetic people in their families, are being abused and manipulated and put against each other through triangulations. And so what happens is that they, instead of focusing on their own personality and their own development, they start focusing on trying to survive. And so they do not develop a consistent personality. They develop one goal: survival.
And they're chameleons. That's all they just
Exactly.
copy like people around them.
Exactly. It's crazy though, because this has a sociopolitical effect. It's very bad, because in the end, what happens is that basically they copy us, they copy our personality traits for them to replace us in society, but they're not the real ones. And so to avoid to be discovered like the imposter, then they have to destroy the original. So that's why they target their victims, and then they have to completely shatter everything that is inside of, like, our self-esteem has to be killed, our person has to be killed, our career has to be killed, everything has to be destroyed.
Who's the narcissist in your family? Excuse me, if you don't mind me asking. Like,
A lot of people, and not just one. So my mom is a borderline narcissist. I think she was more narcissistic, predatory narcissistic when she was younger. Now she became more bipolar and borderline, because after a while, these people tend to become worse and worse, because it's like they continue to.
So people with narcissism, they also typically have a comorbidity. So,
She has also Munchausen syndrome. He has this tendency to like pretend to not feel good, to attract attention. So it's a lot of things together, but in the end, it's her grandiosity problems. She has grandiosity and that's to become manipulative. My dad is what I call parasitic kind of narcissist, because still he has money as priority. So it depends on being frugal, it depends on saving, it depends on.
it's a huge characteristic of these people. Same from my upbringing. That's all they care about.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, but this is because narcissists recognize those type of like, so predatory narcissists recognize parasitic kind of narcissists because they're frugal. So it's easy to understand that someone is frugal and has a dependency on money and on saving money, because you can see that. You can see that from their clothes, from the type of things they do in their life, from how they speak, from how their outfits, the things they do during the day and in their life. And so these people, when a narcissist finds them, that narcissist knows with 100% certainty that that person is not a predator, but is a parasite. And that's important because the main fear of narcissistic people is that they can become the victim themselves. They can become the herbivore of someone else, right? And so they always pick partners that they are sure 100% that have a lower position in the food chain. And so they tend to pick parasites. They tend to pick people that are frugal.
Love to go for people that are vulnerable, or narcissists love to be the hero in the equation, right?
Yeah.
So that bolsters their image. So it's like, oh, I'm the savior. I'm swooping in and I'm gonna fix you, kind of. But it's ironic with my toxic duo, the enabler is the one that she will always like fluff him up, kind of like bolster him and be like, oh, daddy's this, daddy's so great, daddy that, and it's like, it's almost, it's so weird. It's like you see their dysfunction playing out. You see the dynamic and why they cling to one another. It's like she clings to him because he protects her, but he clings to her because she inflates his ego, kind of thing.
That's the way they do it. That's the way they do it. Because, of course, inflating the ego is very powerful, and they know it because it's their weakness as well, right? So their main love language to receive is words of affirmation. So when people have words of affirmation as love language, and also physical touch, I have found, tend to be more narcissistic, because it means that they like, what empathetic people truly care about is time, right? So quality time tends to be more of love language of people that are empathetic. While words of affirmation, which is easy, it's just I can tell you you're beautiful, right? And I don't think so, but I can tell you, and
right.
Like, right? So words of affirmation is the easiest form of love. And then it comes also gifts, for example. So no acts of service, no, actually, I think there is another one called actually gifts. And so those tend to be the values of narcissistic people, like things that are easy to give.
Superficial. So anything, talk is cheap, but that's what they go for, and materialism, 1000%. My narcissistic mother, like the enabler actually told me one time, he goes, oh, that's how she shows her love. I was like, is this a bad, like, dream? Like, are you really saying this to me? And yeah, like, they believe that they're normal. They believe that that's acceptable. I shouldn't say normal, but they believe that that's acceptable.
You know what? Like, I think what most people fail to understand is that a different brain really gives a totally different perspective on life and people and everything. So if you, like, narcissistic people do not think like us. They do not see the world through the same lens. They do not think like us all the time. So how they see everything is just as a chess game. That's their vision of the world. It's just a chess game. They have absolute no idea of what it means to give love or to receive love. They don't even know. And so what they do is they simulate. They only simulate, but in the end, they don't care because they don't feel it. They don't know the difference because they can't feel the difference. And so at that point, they might as well make it overlap with gathering wealth. So gifts, presents, and things like that. Because that's the only thing they know how to do. They know that has a value for them because it gives them social status, it gives them wealth, it gives them, like gifts in general can be a value, a resource in many ways. And so that's the only thing they do because they don't understand anything else. But I will say to go back to also the dysfunctional family dynamics. So what were the dynamics of abuse and enabling this kind of experience in your family or in others or in your extended family?
I'm sorry, what was your question? You broke up a little bit.
So what are the dynamics of abuse that you have experienced in your family or in your extended family? Like what kind of triangulations or manipulations or like experiences you had?
So I had an older sibling that was the golden boy, the older brother, and I was so naive all these years. I like to say that there's no shame in the game of being a good person. It took a lot of us, like it took me until 3 years ago, in spite of my like education and everything. It took me until 3 years ago to finally identify what was going on. But, the golden boy was triangulated against me. He was like their little spy. He was running back and reporting to the toxic duo about all the fun things I was doing in my life, and they're trying to have a social life in spite of these people's efforts to sabotage me and stuff. I always played sports, but it was triangulation, and this is one of the worst tactics, I believe, that narcissists use. This was used by my ex as well. They trivialize and marginalize all of your achievements and accomplishments. So they'll just ignore it. Like you'll do something awesome or you'll achieve something and they just won't even acknowledge it or pay attention to you because they're so fragile and small and weak that they can't. Them praising you or offering you any type of acknowledgement is like admitting to their inadequacy or inferiority. They won't do it. So that was huge. That was huge for my whole upbringing. And with my ex, like, that one gets me. That's a trigger. But, and then as far as the extended family, it's like, like the mob mentality, the group think. It's like nobody wants to, like, acknowledge it. It's like everybody knows that, like, my narcissistic mother, like, she's awful, but nobody does anything about it because nobody wants to be in the line of fire, basically.
Yeah, but also most times people are still narcissistic, but just they're more parasitic. So in the end, it's like hyenas gather, like they eat thanks to the fact that the lions hunt, because hyenas cannot hunt. They're not capable of it. And so this is the same thing in human society. Some people have the tools, the skills, and the physical to be able to. And so they rely on hunters to get prey. And so what they do is they, in the end, enable them or pretend not to see. They take advantage of what they do, their work every day. And so, for example, predatory narcissists tend to, kill their prey or to abuse their prey and stress them out, put them on PTSD. And then once you're on PTSD, it's easy for them to trigger you and to get narcissistic supply from you by doing little things, because you're going to give them emotional reactions that they just vaporize and absorb. And so they live off of people with PTSD that are on PTSD because hunters, like predators, had previously abused. And so a lot of families that have narcissistic people, predator narcissistic people, also count a lot of other members that are just really parasites, or like they take advantage of the work that the predators do. And so they enable people just because they take advantage of it, because they are narcissistic as well, because they don't have the tools to go and hunt the prey themselves. And so in the end, like really empathetic people are really not like a real minority. Like I was reading that in the United States, less than 1% are empathetic. Empath in the sense of people that are capable of awakening. And so it is normal of feeling a minority and feeling like you never encountered anyone like you.
Yeah, we're the minority. I just did, excuse me, I'm sorry to interrupt, but it's like, I just did a video on this. It's coming out tomorrow, actually. We're the exception, we're not the norm. And that's what had kept us in this unfortunate dynamic for so long, is that we kept holding on to hope. We kept believing in the good in these losers, these monsters, and there is no good in them to be cultivated. There's none. And that's one of the hardest lessons that I've had to learn in this life. There's not good in everyone.
No, absolutely. And so the reason why is that because we are like different species of humans in the sense that narcissism is not sustainable in the long term. And so even in narcissistic families, we continue evolving every day, right? Because that's how the universe works. Things keep being dynamic and changing and adapting and expanding, right? And so we are the next step after narcissism, because narcissism allows to build a lot of things because these people climb the ladder all the way, but then become self-toxic, which is what we're seeing in the world today. Have all the the lobbies and the people in power, the 99.9% of them, it's narcissistic. All people in power, while the masses tend to be more empathetic people, but that are not capable of awakening, really. So people that are capable of awakening are the next step in evolution. We are supposed to take power and to start climbing the ladder for us to be able to affect the world in a positive manner, which is why they abuse us and they try to put us in a corner and make us lose self-esteem, because they know that we have the power to change the world that they are instead destroying, because they don't care. They live in the now. They live in the moment. They just do whatever it takes for them to reach whatever they want to reach. And that has a destructive effect, because if you don't think about the consequences, then you're just doing whatever, right? And so we are just the solution to this. For what concerns my experience on narcissistic families and units, also I went for a lot of triangulations. I am the initial trophy child, in the sense that I am the older sister, the older.
Yeah.
What?
You're
Yeah,
the gold.
But so these roles changed with time, and so I started as a trophy child, and I had a lot of unconditional love from my family, my extended family especially, which made me develop a personality of a leader, because I've been the first child, the first grandchild, and so I'm a
Birth order sometimes has to do with that. Birth order and gender typically impact your defined role as the child.
Absolutely. And so I have developed, because in the end I've been used to be the one leading everything, the first one doing things. I didn't even have the idea that I could ask for help for things, because I was always independent kid. And so I developed a leader personality type. I'm an alpha woman, I'm an ENFJ, which is the natural born leader in our societies, the protagonist. And so I have developed that. But then my family, as soon as I started growing up, and so as soon as I started awakening from this, I became the scapegoat. And so my second sister, had been the scapegoat. Then she became the scapegoat. She became the trophy, and I became the scapegoat. And so then I became the black sheep. From then I became the black sheep, basically, because I started awakening and understanding the family dynamics that were toxic. And so, and not only that, but a lot of other things, like my mom would pretend to be sick, and I had to take care of her all the time. So I developed very strong like I will have, like I remember vividly one time she was feeling she was taking pills because she had Munchausen syndrome. So she was taking pills, and those pills were not good for her. She would faint almost every day, and I started being like scared, because I was like probably 12 years old, 15 years old, and so I would see that she was in danger because she was always sick, right? And so one time she fainted while I was asleep, and I was asleep, and as soon as I heard the noise, I woke up and I was there in 3 seconds to help her. I don't even know how I did it. So I had become so hypervigilant. It was just like crazy, right? And that's just Stockholm syndrome. That, and also the rest. as well. And so these were the family dynamics. So triangulation with my sister and triangulation with my dad and my mom. Like when they divorced, she basically has been extremely passive aggressive in isolating us because my dad didn't understand what was going on because at that time there was not much in terms of people were not talking much about narcissism, and so I understand that my dad didn't understand what was going on, but he had his own form of narcissism, so he also was just interested in the fact that she was taking money, not really in us. And so these two things just established a continuous battle between them. We're just in the middle, so there was just a messy divorce.
They still married? Your mom and dad?
They're divorced.
Okay.
But yeah, absolutely. But my mom tried to destroy my dad again. But now she's getting worse. He's getting worse. Like both of them are getting more and more extremized in their own personalities. And that, and also that I had various partners that were narcissistic in their own ways and more and more sophisticated in terms of strategy, to the point that I had been with a real chess player, basically, like someone that really was so Machiavellian that was just unbelievable. Like he had built a net, like a spider web of moves. And when I realized that I was already trapped in it, I was like, oh my God, I cannot believe that this guy has actually built these moves. And then I realized that he had done it before. It was a whole plan that he had already applied with his previous girlfriend. He was doing it again, learning from her previous responses. That's crazy. But while his previous girlfriend was also a scapegoat brand, I call them. So a child like that could not awaken. She wasn't an empath. She was just a scapegoat personality. And so she didn't awaken. She still loves him. She still thinks that he is the one that broke up with her and ruined her life because he rejected her, while he just used her. He's a narcissist. That I am an empath. I have awakened and I became the black sheep again.
Oh yeah. Narcissists just use people. It's like they're opportunistic predators, I always say. They just go for the low-hanging fruit, like whoever's a good target. You know, especially like their children, like that we're like a given, right? They could just have free reign access to us and
Exactly. But they don't really go for the low-hanging fruits. It depends, because this boyfriend that I had, for example, he saw me like when he targeted me. I was already awakened in a sense. I was already not awakened. I would say I wasn't aware of all these dynamics, and this is why I became a prey again, because I wasn't aware of narcissism. I didn't know anything about that, but I had already detached emotionally from my parents, from my narcissism. And so I was already my full self in a sense, although I lacked awareness, and that was the problem. But I was already a leader, I was already an alpha woman, and so he targeted me because these people have to domesticate. They gain power from the idea that they're domesticating right?
like the bigger you are, the better they feel about themselves. Yeah.
Yes. And so who gets the low-hanging fruits is usually who has parasitic.
I shouldn't, like you said. I just meant that in terms of children.
Yeah.
When they have children, it's like, oh, great, you know, my possession type of thing.
Absolutely, they do it. Like they oftentimes they make children. They have children for them to be able to have their tools. They perceive having children like making your own pieces. That's it. That's what they do. They have their husband, they usually is their proxy, and then they make children. They usually are the proxies they use in triangulations or their pawns, or they use them to perpetuate themselves. So they try to make them become predators. I think my mom actually was trying to make me become a predator when I was a kid, but that wasn't who I was, you know, and so that's why then I became a black sheep, because I wasn't like her. I was different. And still now they try to make their other people become like me because they get a lot of supply from me. And so they don't know how to replace me basically because I'm a real empath. And so they get the best. Like I'm there all the time, even if it's not because I have Stockholm syndrome, not because I have Red Cross syndrome, because even though in their all the negative things that they've done, the abusive, blah blah, still I'm here thanks to also the fact that my mom raised me in a sense that so it's not that I'm grateful or anything or attached to anything. I now handle her and I have to hang up on face. If she
Have contact, like limited contact with them?
yeah, totally. I do what I need to do.
So good for you. I'm jealous.
Why?
I live like 10 minutes away from these losers. It sucks.
In Italy, my family is in Italy, and I'm in LA. I had to put some distance, guys. Let us know if you understand what you're talking about placing distance between you and your abuser. That's so important. And it's nice because in the end I am allowed to, call them when I want or pick up the phone when I want and don't do it when I don't want. Or if they're abusive, I just avoid them for a while. My mom is continuously on silent on WhatsApp. And she knows. I blocked her from Instagram and she knows. She's still there.
I blocked these jerks from everything. I blocked email, I blocked the phone, I even blocked him on Instagram because the enabler thought he was clever trying to harass me on Instagram because that was the only form of communication that was open. I was like, nope.
I realized also, for example, so I was dating a guy that then I realized he was another manipulative narcissist. And so this guy had so I started blocking him, and I realized that the more I blocked him, the more he would try to find other ways of contacting me. And so I left him open one channel on purpose. I left him open on Messenger, Facebook Messenger, so that he knows if he wants to talk to me, he does it there, right? And I know he's not gonna try to ask his friends to text me his phone number because they are crazy in these things. So I left one channel that I can control, right? And they know it's not gonna search for other things. So sometimes you also it's nice as long as you're in control. You're strategically letting them do things or not do things, then as long as you know what you're doing, then it's fine. If you allow them to have free control over your life, that's the worst. So you really want to block their moves in various ways by limiting contact. For example, you can have even having routines, for example, say, you can tell your mom, let's talk on Saturday. You don't have to tell her because what she obviously is going to call you on Friday on purpose. But what you do is you just don't pick up the phone until it's Saturday. Saturday, call her same time every Saturday. And that's how you train a narcissist.
That is co-parenting now with her ex-narc, and I love what she's doing. He has to talk on the phone. He has to have that contact so he can be manipulative, but she only responds to him via text now. I'm like, way to go, girl.
Yes, absolutely. You have to define standards are just very specific. It's just a box. You give them that box. In that box, they have your freedom that you decide, and that's it. If they go out of the box, you punish them or you stop contact with them. No matter what, just make sure that you only allow them one very tiny channel of communication or whatever they can do with you. And that usually works. So dysfunctional families in general tend to also include an empath inside, because the reason why they're dysfunctional to us is because we have been in there, otherwise they will just be narcissistic families. We consider them dysfunctional because they are dysfunctional to us. for them, they're not dysfunctional at all. It's just how it should be. We consider them dysfunctional because we are good people. We want the best for everybody. We are virtuous individuals, and so we consider dysfunctional as compared to our way of feeling, right? Which is a way that tries to build a better world, basically. And so in the dysfunctional dynamics, we tend to have all these different players that just, and we perceive as abusers, but for them, they're just that. You know, like if it wasn't for us, they will continue doing whatever they're doing, which is exploitations. Like what they do is just exploit others all the time. Even like in Italy, for example, I don't know, you guys don't have this here, but in Italy, for example, we have people that fake the park on the disabled people parking lots, for example, and they have this thing that they print. Basically what they do is they make sure if they have a grandma or a grandpa or whatever that is disabled or can be considered disabled, they get the certificate. So then they use it in their own car because of course their grandma and their grandpa.
Better than everyone else, you know. They have to have special treatment.
Crazy. They just exploit others. They don't care. They do not care about anybody else. And so these people do this kind of stuff all the time. In Italy, we have a lot of those people as well. Although I feel like, especially in the rural areas, there are a lot of empaths as well, because in the end, like we tend to be born in realities where there is unconditional love in some way. I feel like to become an empath, you also have to go to having a family, in the family, someone that gives you unconditional love, or to be born in a position in which you experience love of some sort. For like, because in the end, also narcissistic mothers or narcissistic fathers, at the very first child, for example, or the child that is born in the best conditions, let's say, because sometimes the first child is someone that, you know, like it's not planned. And so the second gets more unconditional love compared to the first one. So the kid that is born at the peak of success and resources of the parents or desire, whatever, of the parents, that kid experiences the most unconditional love, the most abundance of resources, the most happiness, the most parental care. All these things are those that allow become an empath, and to become an unconditional lover, and to become independent from anybody else, right? And instead, the opposite happens with narcissists. Like in a dysfunctional family, when resources start going down, or when there are already people in the family that are being abused, and so the child is born and observe the triangulations, and that kid becomes a narcissist because it just sees that the world is a bad place, that being empathetic doesn't lead you anywhere good. So they start perceiving the world as hostile, and they start just becoming sneaky and manipulative to be able to survive. And so the first one, usually, but not always, the first one or the one that experiences the most abundance of resources or whatever, maybe it can be from a grandparent. You know, sometimes it's your grandparents that allow you to be nurtured as a kid, or your teachers sometimes. You know, like there must be a figure in your life that really made you feel unconditionally loved, that really showed you what unconditional love is. So you become an empath. Once you become an empath, there's no way back. In the sense that you cannot be a narcissist, and at the same time, you tend to awaken. Because people that are empathetic, they suffer if they're not treated well, if they're not allowed to be themselves, if they are abused, or they suffer if they see bad in the world. We really are allergic to bad stuff. And so we tend to react.
I hate that it comes out physiologically as well. Like, it's just overwhelming. The amount of empaths that I'm in contact with from, you know, this space, the narcissistic abuse, you know, it manifests physically because we are so repressed. We're not allowed to express ourselves. We're not emotionally supported. We're not nurtured. And we love these people. We self-sacrifice over and over and over, and we just keep depleting our physical bodies. I hate it. It's me. in the wheelchair over here. But like people have autoimmune diseases, I'm not denying that there's a physical, your body starts attacking itself. That for sure happens. But it's because of how we've been traumatized as, in our most formative years of our lives up until 7 years old. That's your theta brainwave state. You're absorbing, absorbing, absorbing. And people are telling you that you're a nuisance. People are telling you that you're not entitled to your feelings. So your body's like, screw it. I'm going to come down on you too,
Yeah, it's also because it's so this is really the universal laws in the sense that everything strives when the soil is fertile. And so if we are born in an environment that is not fertile for us, we start developing issues because, our body tells us, okay, we're not in a fertile environment. But at the same time, we can move, we don't have to stay in the same place. And so we're not like a plant that if the environment is fertile, it grows. If it's not fertile, it dies, right? We can move, we can go around, we can change place, we can change family, we can change our surroundings, and we can manipulate our environment in various ways. We have hands to manipulate around us. We have words. We can build things in so many different ways. So this is our gift. This is the gift of humanity. We can build our own environment, make it fertile for us anywhere. It can be anywhere. We just have to realize when things are toxic and want to exist this, and at the same time that things that make us thrive. And we can do it ourselves. It just has to be, it's in our mind. We can be the source of everything we need. I'm talking about empathy in particular, because in the end, the reason why narcissistic people are instead attacking us all the time and abusing us and using us, because they don't have that inner source for them to manipulate and create a personal environment for them, because they feed off of us. They feed off of us as a carnivore, feed off of an herbivore. And so they do not have that source. We have it, and that's the point. We have it, and that's why they use us. But also, we should realize that because we have that source, we can use it. They spend their whole life trying to make us not believe in ourselves and not believe that we can be the source of everything we want, because they want to suck energy out of us. And if we realize that we're the source,
energy vampires. And just like what you were saying, I just put a post up, I think it was yesterday or the day before, about the inner critic. It's like that's part of them dismantling us, our endearing qualities, They're constantly coming down on us, constantly ripping us apart, constantly criticizing us. So we get that implanted in our own psyche, that we're the ones, like, we just believe that we're inherently bad, It's like, and that's part of the, up until 7 years of age, like when these people have access to you during childhood, it's like they implant this toxic belief system.
Yeah, it's true. But again, they do it on purpose, because if they don't do that, we will immediately be able to flourish into, first of all, shine, and so show by contrast that they don't have a light. They're the black holes, and so they do not want us to thrive, because otherwise they already have imposter syndrome. We're just gonna highlight how they are not good, how they're bad people, how they're not skilled and talented. And so we get abused all the time to delay as much as possible our capability of thriving and of shining our light in the world, first of all. And then it's also because in the end they want to keep abusing us and keep getting narcissistic life. And so if you awaken and realize that they're training you and that you're better than them, you're not going to let them, right? And so they have to make sure to manipulate as much as possible, because under stress, for us to continue staying. What they do all the time is to, with their manipulation, triangulation, with gaslighting, The gaslighting is crazy because it really leads to a sort of brain regression. Really, we have a regression of our capabilities, of intellectual capabilities, and we get into this cognitive dissonance that then make us put us in this bubble where we don't understand what is going on and we can't get out and believe whatever they're saying. We're under stress. It happens continuously in capitalism, in workplaces. This is how toxic workplaces convince people to work there all the time because they abuse them continuously. Their managers continuously ask for things. They're always under pressure. It's on purpose because this type is like in a hive of bees. So our like different diversification as human beings doesn't happen at the physiological body level, but it happens first in the brain. And so reaching the cognitive dissonance make us become herbivores, make us become people that just can be abused because they don't know how to escape. It's like a cow in a farm. You don't want the cow in the farm to understand how strong she is as compared to you, because otherwise the cow is just going to kill you, right? And escape from the farm. You don't want the cow to know that you are feeding off her. You don't know the cow. You don't want the cow to know how many they are. It's cognitive dissonance, basically. The same thing that happens in farms. In farms, animals are kept distant from each other, separated in their own thoughts, and they're like continuously
Conquer. That's what the head of the narcissist family does. Divide and conquer. That's triangulation.
exactly divide and conquer. And not only that, but also petting them, making them feel like they're good, they're in a good environment, good girl, right? And so they feed your ego, they make you feel good until you do something for them not to awaken. And so that's lighting, and that's the cognitive dissonance that they put us in. And that's the problem. We can get out of it because in the end it's just a temporary effect. And there are various ways of doing it. First of all, with awareness, because awareness is the thing. Like also some books that I always suggest are the books by Eckhart Tolle. If you haven't reached the awareness first, nobody can understand those books. They're so cryptic because first we need to reach awareness of how narcissists work and how narcissistic people are different than us. They're just different. They're not even a thick in a sense. They're just different. Their brain development is different, and they're not like us. We just have to realize it. And unfortunately, the main difficulty is that when you're born as an empath, as an awakened empath, in a family of narcissistic people, you don't know until you get out of it that you're other people like you.
Normalized. That's all we know. So it's normalized. They take advantage of our isolation as children.
Exactly.
And then if you're with a narcissistic partner, they isolate you further because they don't want you to have any support. They don't want you to have any outside influences speaking sense into you, saying, maybe this isn't a good situation.
Absolutely, sure. They work for isolation because without isolation, the same thing as the animal in the farm, right? If you don't isolate the animals, they're gonna join forces and start a revolution. you know, like they're gonna talk to each other. And so the very first thing is to isolate the victims. However, it happens also through the cognitive dissonance. So they don't have to isolate us physically. They just can tell us, you know, don't believe in anybody, or don't believe in yourself, or just believe in me. That's enough. Or they can stress you out all day long, and so that you don't even think. You talk to others. You start isolating. You start having a reality at home that is totally different than the reality you experience outside, because most of the things happen in closed doors, in families as well as in the partners. So their abuse happens behind closed doors. Their gaslighting happens behind closed doors. So when you go out in the world, you feel like you have these two worlds apart.
There's people out here.
Exactly. So, but you don't talk. And so that's an isolation, because in the end, they have created a bubble within which you move, but you don't actually get out of it. And so that is the main problem, that they create this bubble where in the end, you are not free to talk to anyone. And so you are isolating in your brain by isolating their stuff they tell you. things they tell you, the work experience at home, in your head, instead of sharing it. So that's another form of isolation. You don't have to isolate people physically just to close them in a house, right? And just tell them, do not talk to anyone. This is a secret between us. We have
That's
some.
this is family systems. They're like cults.
They are like cults. It's exactly the same thing. Because this is important also, because people associate the word narcissism with a personality, narcissistic personality. The reality is, narcissistic people are just predators and parasites. The narcissism is their tactic. So the narcissistic strategies are the same in everything. Every time that people want to enslave us or someone else, use the same exact strategy. Farm, it can be a family, it can be a partnership, it can be a marriage, it can be anything. Every time, it can be a workplace, a school, every time, and religion included. Every time someone wants to manipulate people and to obtain something through those manipulations, they use the narcissistic strategy. Nothing else than a chess game. Really are nothing else than a Machiavellian chess game. And so if you want to obtain things, you isolate people just because it's a good move. It is not something that they do because they're built this way and they do these things without realizing. They know exactly what they're doing. They just have a goal, which is survival through exploitation. And they use anything to obtain it.
Everyone else's expense. As long as it's not me, I'm going to save and protect myself. And I'm going to take down everyone around me. That's what narcissists, like, justify. They have an external locus of control. They're constantly the victim, right? They're the perpetual victim. So it's got to be the world against me or me against the world, you know? The narcissist is the perpetual victim. The outside world is striking against them. So that's how they justify their malice. They're like, oh, I have to take this one out before they hurt me.
Yeah, because they're raised that way. Like these people tend to be the third child, the fourth, the fifth, the sixth child, or like the child, or someone that has experienced in the dysfunction. Sometimes it's lonely children, right? And so when the point is that every time a child sees the abuse happening on someone else, so when he's born, first thing that happens is he starts realizing that there are abusers and there are people that are abused, right? And so victims and abusers, every time a child experiences these kinds of worlds and observes those kind of things, that child has the capability, the clarity to observe those things and to learn from those things and to understand, of course, being a victim is bad. Who will believe that being a victim is good? If you're born in a world where a victim suffers and the abuser is happy, right? So they start like identifying with the abuser and trying to just become like them because they're just trying not to become the victim, not because they want to become abusers. They're just trying to escape from being a victim. And that's what
that way. I feel like the enabler feels that way as well. You know, it's like as I'm the target, me, the black sheep, he's out of the fire zone. He's out. Like that's why every time I used to go to the henchman and try to appeal to him to be like, oh, you know, the narcissistic mother, she's ratchet, she's awful. He would be like, oh, she loves you, and you know, all that crap. That was not true. That we all knew was not true, and he was just protecting himself.
Exactly. This is where the lack of empathy comes from in the end, because if you are in a situation where you know that you are also raising for your own survival and that there are abusers in the world, after a while you start developing a main narcissistic view of the world, which is this binary world in which there is the abuser and there is the victim. Nothing else in between. You can only be either one of them. So if you have to pick, of course you pick the abuser. And if you empathize with the victims, then what happens is that you become the victim because the abuser exists. Victims need to exist because the abuser need them. And so either it's them or it's you. And so these people also have to stop empathizing because they're traumatized. They're afraid of becoming the victims themselves. And so these people, like your brother, for example, also come from narcissistic and dysfunctional families as well, where they had a parent that was abusing the parent or the kids. And so they have basically not developed empathy because there has been a point in their life where they have observed these dynamics and they have seen that helping others never turns out well, right? It always lead to you becoming the victim. And so they're like, okay, let's do it. The reality is that is not true because there are various ways of reacting to these narcissistic people. Even becoming a victim in a sense to do the right thing can be much better than becoming an abuser yourself. So there are various ways of doing it. The reality is that those people are just cowards. They're just cowards that whenever they have seen that thing, they got so scared, they have created this wall in their mind. They just like created a limit that they never overcome. Just, okay, I'm gonna go this far, but then you ask for help, I'm just gonna deny it, refuse it, because I know that that can lead me potentially to become the victim myself. So no, don't take it. So those people tend to be very common, and this is what also differentiates us from. We awakened empaths are extremely courageous. We are really independent, autonomous. We know what we do, and we are like ready to sacrifice ourselves for the good things, right? For good people, because we know that in the end, that's more important than anything else, right?
Yes, it's good to be special. It's not easy to be the cycle breaker, but shoot, we couldn't be different if we tried.
No, yeah.
Nancy, we have a great question. I want to answer it from Gigi. When the scapegoat leaves, does the narc treat the golden child differently? Yes, that goes back to what you were talking about, how the dynamics are fluid. They're always changing.
Yeah.
So, yeah, like I was the black sheep. I'm gone out of the equation. Thank God. Saved myself and my family. So, the golden boy, here's the situation. His monster wife, like, her and the narc, like, butted heads immediately. You know, because, like, narcs repel one another. They can't share the spotlight, right? Yeah. So, I'm inclined to think that the narc is just perpetuating her misery onto everyone. But at the same time, I'm inclined to think she's on her best behavior because they fear being alone like the plague. And as she's getting older, she needs more henchmen to take care of her, basically.
Yeah. Like, so what was the question exactly? If the scapegoat receives a different treatment?
When the scapegoat leaves, what's the dynamic with the golden child? How does that change?
Yeah. Well, it really depends. The point is that the narcissist always pick these two characters, but they can be the same person. So a lot of narcissists actually pick on purpose bipolar people with bipolar disorders, because people with bipolar disorders can be two things at the same time. They have their narcissistic side. When they have their narcissistic time, they can become the proxy that the narcissists use against others to conquer the world. When instead they become the victim, because they tend to also become empathetic and paranoid and more vulnerable, in that moment they become the source of narcissistic supply emotions. And so this is how narcissistic people tend to always induce on purpose these type of personality types, either in two different people or in one person only. So if they cannot have both the trophy shark and the scapegoat at the same time, what they do is they induce the trophy and the scapegoat in the same person. Usually they do it with the partner. And that's why the partner tends to become more and more bipolar with time, because they need to do the triangulations all the time. And see if they cannot do the triangulations with different people, they will do it with the partner. So they will say one thing one day, another thing the other day. They will praise them one day and punish them the other day. And this creates bipolarism, right? That's like the gaslighting narcissistic people do, is the main source of bipolarism. Don't trust anyone that tells you the opposite. The reason why people are bipolar is because of gaslighting. For the system, generational trauma, functional families, from whatever, gaslighting from the media, from the governments, from everybody. That's the reason why you are bipolar. And all of us are a little bit, because all of us tend to go through cognitive dissonance and to abuse every day for various reasons. So we do tend to be bipolar a little bit. But it's curable in the sense that you just have to be aware of your own issues, of your own changes. You have to start observing yourself, because when it gets too bad, you cannot cure it anymore. You can observe yourself and going through the accident of whatever you see yourself is experiencing.
Mental illness is typically a result of trauma. They say that it's always.
Yeah, always. But narcissistic abuse is the most type of abuse in the world, and it's also at the systemic level. So narcissistic abuse is what our society is built on, basically, and we don't even talk about it enough, because this is, people don't want for us to find out, because we are like the fact that we are in cognitive dissonance and we are abused and we are bipolar make us great customers. You buy other things because they know triggers, they know how to make you buy things, they know how to make you go into fear so that they change how you vote politically. So it's like it's easy to manipulate people that are in cognitive dissonance and that are gaslit. It is not easy to manipulate people that are awakened. And if people are awakened, you have to be real. You have to be authentic for them to trust you, for them to buy from you, for them to vote for you. And so we don't have authentic people in power, but we have very few authentic people in power. And so nobody wants a population that is awakened. Nobody wants the masses that are awakened. And so this is why we continue being ignorance. Yeah, exactly. So how was your cognitive dissonance triggered or like trained during your childhood?
I thank God, for like childhood innocence. And like I said, I was like naive, I guess, for a while. I just kept doing me, I was awesome at sports, and I got involved in all the clubs I possibly could, like student council and philanthropies. I just wanted to get out of that house, the narc den, you know? I couldn't get as far away from these people as fast as I possibly could. So I got like academic scholar, that was my coping mechanism, being a perfectionist, I guess. So I got an academic scholarship to college. I was always in honors, excelling in sports. So that was my thing. I was just, I was an overdoer. So, they just came down on me that much harder. And it's a riot, I'll say, because the golden boy is like celebrated by the narc. She can't beef him up enough. And like he's done much less than me. Not trying to like be self-righteous, but the facts are the facts. Like I was granted like financial support to go to college and stuff. Definitely. She was so like envious, and it sucks. Like we don't operate like that, but these people just can't. They envy everyone. So
I feel like as we cannot understand for most part how they function, they cannot understand us. Because we truly are like opposite in the sense of like psychologically speaking, all the perspective you have on the world, they are the complement to it. So we truly are completely opposite. There's no overlap whatsoever in our way of functioning, in our perspective on the world. It's like they are different kind of people. They are different kind of people. And so the fact that we excel is for them like we want to be arrogant, because they don't understand that we're enjoying what we're doing. That what we obtain is just a result of our love for whatever we're doing. And so they perceive us as we perceive them as they're envious, they hate me. They perceive us are like they're arrogant, they're trying to get the spotlight that I would like to have and they can't have because they're bothered, right? And so they do it all the time. What's up?
Dog, I'm so sorry. My dog is like a couple feet away from me. The door's wide open. There's a squirrel. I'm just bracing myself.
We can hear it more because probably because I was talking, and so if I'm talking, like your volume is like silent, and so nobody heard the dog. Don't worry about that. Yeah. So yeah, so what I was saying is that basically what they are jealous of us, they hate us because they believe we're taking the spotlight on purpose. Because that's what they really want to do. They want to be on the spotlight so bad, but because they know that the world is full of people like them, they know that if they do, they will get attacked. So they never do. And they feel all the time bad because they have this grandiosity in their mind they cannot express. And so they're continually frustrated because they have to shrink as compared to their ego. They have to shrink all the time. And so when they see us, that we shine in all of our lives, they feel like they hate us because they're like, this is what I don't do because I'm afraid. And they don't understand that we don't do it on purpose. We don't do it because we want to shine. We do it because love what we're doing, and the fact that we shine and we succeed is just a natural consequence of it. It's not because we're trying to achieve it. I had the experience you had, so I also was I got awarded a lot of scholarships. I was all like I have all out degrees. I have like 3 degrees, like one dog PhD, second level master degree. It's like I have like a unique education, and I've always succeeded. Like I've always had the best of the best of the best all the time. Because as you're saying, also your parents, by keeping you all the time by telling you you're not good enough, you become so OCD, so much of a perfection that really like, and I've never been rewarded for that. Actually, my mom, like my sister was a scapegoat initially, and then she became a trophy. And I remember my mom would call me and tell me, hey, I was the exam while I was in college, right? And I would be like, I got like 29, maybe 30. And I would be like, I got 29. 29 is almost 30. And I would be like, 29? And my sister instead would go and be like, I got 26. And I'm like, oh, amazing. And it was a totally different, like 2 completely different standards that she used to raise us for. And that was also part of triangulation, you know, and so that made me continue to strive for better to the point that I became like a robot because I would just do things. Like I got a lot of achievements in a very short time, including also the scholarship that I have gotten that I was achieving such of a short time, right? And so they do it all the time. Obviously, they trophy us or scapegoat us based on their needs, just because they need to get supply, right? So that's the way. We tell you when they, you know, you're never good, then they're gonna that you're under their control. They're gonna see that you do whatever.
Quote, I have a great quote that I say all the time. Paramahansa Yogananda. Small people make themselves taller by cutting off the heads of others.
Yes. And it's totally true because, you know, if you don't know how to rise above, the only thing you can do is to pull others down. You really don't know that there is a better way of doing things. These people have imposter syndrome for their whole life. They are like insecure themselves. They just know that they want to achieve more and they're afraid of becoming big, but I don't know how. And so they just try to do whatever it takes. And if that entails also sabotaging others, they will do it. Because if you win, they lose. And so they have to win no matter what. They do not care. That's their goal because they know what it means because they have seen it, not they have been one, but they have seen what it means to be a victim. And definitely they don't want to be a victim. So they live their whole life escaping even slightest possibility of becoming victims of abuse of any sort, like even becoming, like not becoming professional, or like not increasing their social status to them, leads to becoming the masses, staying in the masses, and the masses are abused. We're a farm. This is a farm, and so they know that, and they don't want that, because they don't know how to be the source of their own well-being, the source of their own happiness. They don't know how to build happiness around themselves, wellness around themselves. And so they believe they get it by achieving more and more and more, by increasing their social status, by achieving more, like growing their wealth or growing their network.
It's like Schadenfreude. They take pleasure from other people's misfortunes. It's sadistic. It's such a sick and twisted dynamic. Happy people want other people to be happy. Misery loves company. It's
true. It's true, because that's how they feel all the time. And so they feel like, like if you feel miserable all the time, and you don't know how to escape from the misery within yourself, the only way you have to feel you have company is to bring others at your level, so that you see in their eyes that you gave them the same that you have every day, and for that second you feel better. So it's like, it's unbelievable how that works. And also it's something that they've developed over time. It's kind of like a reward system, because they're like this, the only way for them to continue doing this and to continue perpetuating bad on others and to exploit others, bless you. The only way they have to do it is by having a reward system, that every time that they do bad to others, they get that reward, right? And so they continue perpetuating bad, exploiting others, because every time they do it, they feel good, right? And so that's why they continue. That's a real sadistic trait. It's like narcissism. 100% of the time, always sadism, because there's no other way. If you are, especially that, what a lot of psychologists talk about, which is cognitive empathy, right? And they say that when you need to get to cognitive empathy, that's bullshit. That is bullshit. There is no such a thing like cognitive empathy. Empathy is only when you feel others' feelings. If you have cognitive empathy,
is BS. Like, I did a video, it's like my narc mother, when our son passed away, it's like she knew she had to, like, be nice or, like, comforting because she was my mother, but it was so ingenuine. It was so awkward and, like, not right. It's like she knows that's what they say cognitive empathy is, right? Like, they know they're supposed to feel something, but they don't, so they act like they do.
Yeah, and that's the word, because if you have cognitive empathy, which means you understand others, but do not feel what they feel, that's the gate for sadism. That's the gate for sadism. Because at that point, you know how to hurt them, and you don't feel the hurt that they cause to them, that you cause to them, and so you easily become sadistic. So people that do that tend to become sadistic all the time, because they tend to be able to see others' triggers and others' feelings and other traumas and stuff, because they have cognitive empathy, which is not empathy, right? And so by not having real empathy, but understanding and reading other psychology, they have access to all of their traumas, and they can choose what to use that day to gather supply from you. And so that's what I'm saying, that cognitive empathy is not empathy. Like, when people tell you have to reach cognitive empathy, or there are different kinds of empathy, no, there's only one kind. It's empathy. It's you feel what others feel.
I agree. That's well said.
Yeah, because if you do, then you are part of them. You're part of a group, because if you're good, you feel good. So it's like being part of a sheep where everybody's trying to go in the same direction. If you instead feel what others, like, know what others feel, but don't feel it, you are allowed to go in an opposite direction and gain pleasure out of it. So you can become the one that tries to sabotage the ship because you don't care. You don't others. You don't have to involve others. And so in the moment that that happens, that people do not feel real empathy for others, that person is already becoming a different species. It's not the same thing. That's not part of the same group. They are different. It's like in nature, right? In nature, like in the same group, animals tend to gather together, right? And to be part of it, of a group that where everybody helps each other. If instead they start not empathizing with each other, if they start differentiating, if they start feeling like they become sadistic, which means they get rewarded every time they hurt others, that's not the same species anymore. That's a predator. That's a parasite. So it's a totally different type of behavior that it identifies people that are not part of the same group. This is what I'm saying. And unfortunately, the human beings, as a family, the dysfunctional family, creates different traits and different species of human beings, like through brain development that is different, and they create different characters. And so it's not like in the animals where, of course, like an animal of a certain species will give rise and give birth to the same animal, right? In human beings, because our differentiation is anti-type depend on the brain and depend on the brain development, in the same family there can be a narcissist, there can be a parasite, and there can be a herbivore. There can be different type of traits based on the type of position they occupy in the family, in the type of development they had, the type of, if they have been profit, they've been scapegoated, if they've been abused, if they have observed abuse. All these different positions give different brain developments, because even though you're like, like a lot of people ask, how is it possible that I have the same parents as my sisters and my siblings, right? But I have a different personality, because the environment to experience is not your parents, your house, the walls, or the school, right? The environment to experience is the psychological condition that you're placed in when you're in a functional family. So if you're the trophy, if you're the scapegoat,
The golden boy is a narcissist now, and then there's me. That's
yeah.
the cycle breaker, the empath in the dynamic, and we couldn't be more different. We had very different experiences.
Exactly. It's a different experience. It's not the same. Like, even though you had the same parents, you have been treated like
Right.
you treated the same. And so, of course, you haven't really had the same type of development because you haven't had the same type of stimuli while growing up. It's difficult to understand. Most people don't understand why they're different and their siblings are different. And also feel very lonely because in the end, it's like our personality type is rare in the sense that there are few of us and even fewer of them awaken. And so it's difficult to understand that there are other people in the world like us, but there are a lot. And you just have to, like, if you feel lonely, if you feel like you're the only one in your family that ever experienced this, if you feel like the black sheep, if you're being scapegoated, if you're being told that you're wrong, that you're not enough, and all this stuff, just understand that just a manipulation. There are a lot of people in the world like you. You just have to go sit into narcissistic abuse pages. You'll find a lot. There are also a lot of narcissists that follow.
I'm not a fan of social media because it's a narc playground, right? Like Facebook. But for this purpose, like you're saying, I appreciate the validation, the support is everything. That's why I value this community so much.
Yeah.
It's everything. Like, to get in touch with fellow victims, to legitimize each other's, experiences that were nightmares, like 1,000%.
Absolutely. This gives me so much pleasure, honestly, like be able to help others. First of all, because I know like this is our reward system. This is what good people get rewarded with, right? Which is because we are virtuous people and we're good people, we get rewarded when we're doing good. When we see that others are uplifted, when we see that others are helped, that they feel better, that they feel, that they improve their awareness, that they get out of the abuse. And we see all those things. That's such a, like, for me, it's like, and that's amazing because that actually means that I am getting on your same page, right? So we are getting in way of people when they get better, and that allows us to do good, because in the end, that's the best thing. That's amazing, because if you are rewarded by doing good things, and this is why also narcissism, the opposite way, is not safe, sustainable in the long term, because someone that is gets rewarded when it does bad, after a while is building a shell that is not compatible with his own existence. Like a mollusk that builds a shell, and after a while, had to they had to change the shell because it's not compatible with them anymore. And that's how narcissistic people are. They build shells that are not compatible with them, because they really create shit every day in the world, and then all that stuff surround them and creates an unfertile environment for them too. And that's why they have to keep climbing, and that's why they have to keep changing big things. At the same time, we instead get rewarded by doing the things, so making good. So our type of behavior, that's why we are the evolved version of the narcissist. Like, we are the next step in the evolution of the human species, because we are the ones that get rewarded if we do good, which means that we can only build a work that is more and more fertile for us, more and more sustainable, because we get rewarded for that. Yeah. But without, this is important also, because without the narcissistic abuse we have received, we wouldn't know about that. We wouldn't be different, in a sense. Like, we wouldn't be the good one unless we came, in a sense, from functional families, unless we had been through some sort of trauma that made us awaken. So they also have a function, like narcissistic people, they have a function, which is to awaken us. Awaken and to consciousness, and to trying to make the world a better place, because we know what it means not to do that. And so that's very powerful. And even though we perceive abuse as a negative thing, I'm honestly very grateful of whatever happened to me, because without that, I wouldn't be the person I am today. I wouldn't have, known about this horrible reality that we are in, and all these horrible things that happen every day in our world. I wouldn't have any idea, And so I'm grateful for all that happened, even though
Right.
that's a problem.
Quick story. I met my husband in college, and we were madly in love with each other. And I was so screwed up from being raised in that dysfunctional environment, being the black sheep and whatnot. So I broke up with my husband in college, and I gravitated to a narcissist, like most of us do, because it's like, oh, you're treating me like crap, this is love.
Family.
So Joe and I reunited after the Narc dumped God. Thank God, best thing that loser ever did for me. But, I appreciate Joe on a level that I never would otherwise. So I do believe everything happens for us, not to us, right? That's like what you're saying. So, all right, Nancy, what time is it? I have no idea.
I haven't checked the time for a while. Let me check. Well, we've been here for like an hour and 40 minutes. That's been a long life.
You're a rock star, Nancy. This was awesome. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Nancy, you're awesome, and you're beautiful. And Nancy's channel is Game Changers _Game Changers. And, check out Bumped, Bruised, and Blessed. Follow me. Follow Nancy. I have a YouTube channel, Bumped, Bruised, and Blessed. Do you have...
Game Changers is my bio. In my bio, you can find my link tree with all the links to my Facebook groups, to my outdoor events in LA, to my holistic coaching practice, and to everything you want to know about me, and all the services that you can find, and all the information, even free information and education on narcissistic abuse and narcissism in general, and how to get out of the narcissistic abuse syndrome. So follow us and put the notification on for posts and videos so that you can always receive updates on whatever free material we upload to educate you all and make you all get to a better place.
Awesome. This is great. Thank you so much, Nancy, for doing this. And thank you everyone for joining us.
Yes.
All right, we're good.
Bye, everyone.